It's a rock and roll circus pressed onto 2 slabs of vinyl.
It was the makeup. It was the fire. It was just like, BAM! Crazy!
Kiss Alive unleashed a thunderous blast of rebellion that turned 4 underground freaks into superheroes.
That's the album that broke everything wide open.
Alive became the first live masterpiece of rock.
That double live record changed the face of the music industry.
It was magic, man. It was like best party music in the world.
But now, after 3 decades of speculation, Kiss is finally revealing that Alive isn't entirely a live recording. In the fall of '75, Kiss Alive stormed America, searing all the phantasm and fury of the band's raucous stage show onto a double LP.
Kiss Alive sounded like what a rock concert was supposed to sound like.
This is big, booming, straight on rock album, and it's makes you vibrate in your stomach.
I just thought it sounded amazing. When you put it on, it was like, you were on stage in the living room.
Kiss Alive was an unexpected and unprecedented phenomenon. At the time, live albums were viewed as commercially toxic, and for a band without one hit to release a 75-minute collection of songs was considered career suicide.
In those days, live records were a signal of doom, and double live records simply didn't exist. The Beatles had never done it, the Rolling Stones had never done it, Jimi Hendrix had never done it.
But the monstrous success of Alive hoisted a giant middle finger at industry convention.
We were told we were crazy to attempt it, but at the same time, we were also told we were crazy to wear makeup and 8-inch heels and do what we were doing when the biggest acts around were the Carpenters and John Denver.
When they came together in New York in December of 1972, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, and Ace Frehley had little in common, other than the desire to drive a stake through the heart of the hippie era.
We knew we didn't want to look like a San Francisco band, fat and hairy, like mountain climbers. We didn't want to go Rocco's lumberjacking.
I had no interest in seeing some band that was tripping on acid and had a light show behind it because they were all so ugly or all so disheveled that you didn't want to look at them. That wasn't my idea of a rock experience.
Drawing inspiration from Marvel Comics, England's glam movement, and New York's glitter scene, Kiss envisioned themselves as your mother's worst nightmare, in tights.
We had this dream of putting together the band you could actually hate, but have to admit, it's the best show I've ever seen in my life.
Kiss released 3 unsuccessful albums over 13 months. On vinyl, their songs simply couldn't match the power, attitude, and passion of their live act.
They just didn't sound like what we thought of ourselves as.
By early '75, Kiss was unquestionably the most hypnotic live act in rock.
We were selling out all the concerts. People loved us live, but the studio records weren't happening, so why not do a live record?
In the early '70s, live records simply weren't done. But in typical Kiss fashion, the band defied convention and made plans to record their entire 75-minute live set.
The record industry thought we were out of our minds.
To come out with a live kind of best of album of a band that never had a best of was kind of ballsy, we thought. But it was also the only choice we had since we didn't have any money left to pay them.
On May 16th, 1975, over 12,000 crazed teens packed into Detroit's Cobo Arena for the first of 5 shows to be recorded for the album.
I remember the noise level was unbelievable. Fans are screaming, you can hear the band coming through the walls.
For producer Eddie Kramer, the intensity of the live show presented a technical nightmare.
Here's a big challenge. How the hell do you make a band like Kiss who jump around on stage, flying up in the air, there's bombs going off and all this kind of crap, and how are you going to make that sound great on records?
In those days, I'd be taken over like I'd be possessed, and I'd make tons of mistakes on my bass. I remember talking backstage with the guys, and everybody agreed that we would jump around less, that we would try to hit the notes more.
You're under the gun, you're under the pressure, you gotta do it right that night, that moment, those screams. All that's going on is going on to the energy of the record.
The band played their hearts out, but the outcome was a rude awakening. Miscues that went unnoticed in a crowded arena were amplified 100 times over on tape.
There's no question that the guys thought, we'll have that live show, it'll be done, that'll be it, it'll be terrific. And of course we went back and listened to it and no one liked anything.
Anybody who thinks you can just mic a band and mic an audience and come out with something like that has a lot to learn.
The truth of the matter, after we did those 4 or 5 shows that we recorded live, we still didn't have it.
In the summer of '75, Kiss recorded a series of concerts in the hard rock strongholds of Davenport, Iowa, Wildwood, New Jersey, Cleveland, and Detroit.
Rock and roll, Detroit!
The band's performances were typically outrageous, but when they listened back to the recordings, Kiss discovered the frenzy and fury of their live show was a difficult thing to capture on tape. The Alive studio sessions would give birth to persistent debate over the integrity of the album as a live recording. For years, Kiss opted not to address rumors that significant portions of the album were overdubbed. Now, the band is finally setting the record straight.
Yeah, we touched up what we had to do, and I think it only made it better.
Most people assumed it was all live. It wasn't. After the fact, you went into the studio, and sometimes you had to overdub a kick drum, or, if the guitar was really out of tune, you had to redo it. If a harmony was out of tune, you had to redo that too.
Because as much as you want to retain the integrity of what you've done live, you also don't want to diminish it by having people hear guitars drop, wrong chords.
Come on, Paul.
Bum notes being sung.
I know. A finger too.
Well, there's a classic example of, the Paul just running around, jumping up to the microphone. He's not on mic correctly, so this would be an opportunity for us to fix this in the studio.
When producer Eddie Kramer started mixing the album at New York's Electric Lady Studios in August of '75, he knew he'd captured some magical performances. But there were also troublesome glitches, like vocal mistakes on the track Black Diamond.
Ah, what do we got? Hang on, we might have something here. Let's see.
Ooh, Black Diamond!
Kramer had Paul Stanley re-record the vocals in the studio.
Ooh, Black Diamond!
Then he matched it seamlessly to the existing track.
Perfectly sung, with a lot of strength, conviction, and it really sounds like it was done on the occasion. And I challenge anybody to make the distinction between what he sang in the studio and what he did live.
What we felt was essential was to capture the integrity of the performance, not necessarily having it note for note what actually happened. The impact of being there and the feeling that is given by that album was much more important.
All right, it's rock and roll all night and party every day.
In addition to fixing mistakes, the band wanted Eddie Kramer to boost the sound of the audience, creating a delirium that would occasionally overtake the music.
We wanted to bombard your senses as though you were immersed in the crowd. So to that end, we certainly added audience. Not that there wasn't a sold-out audience there screaming, but miking an audience where you can be in the midst of them is almost impossible.
This sounds like the audience to me. Left and right audience. They're great, but they're not big enough. We want them bigger.
So Kramer spliced together the best cheers, whistles, and applause from various Kiss performances, and overdubbed that amplified fanfare onto the musical tracks.
And here's the effect with it all in.
I can't believe that just ruined it for me. They overdubbed the audience.
Though purists reject the studio trickery as tampering with reality, to the band it was necessary in rendering the ultimate concert experience.
Who cares if it was overdubbed? Doesn't matter, The energy still comes through with all the bombast and all the glory and all the craziness.
You put a scratch on your leg, you put a Band-Aid on it. In essence, it still is a live record.
So it's anything but dishonest. You know, the reason it stands up to this day as a monumental live album is because it captures the live experience. If it feels like a live experience, it is a live experience.
Good night! Good night! Following its release in the fall of '75, Kiss Alive spent an astounding 2 years on the Billboard charts and sold 4 million copies. The album's entirely unexpected success forever altered the way the industry viewed live recordings.
That double live record changed the face of the music industry. Then every band, once they reached a certain popularity, did their live record as part of their catalog.
To this day, it's still a record that rock fans will go to. It's a classic rock live album.